Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 79 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin. Mike is out this week, but here with us, as usual, is Fia.
Hello.
And, oh boy, this is going to be an episode. Today, dear listeners, we are talking about the recent movie that came out, Jurassic World Dominion. And before we started this, Fia was like, I didn't do a swamp corner. I have so many thoughts about this movie.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. Probably not as much as you, but definitely some thoughts.
So for the rest of this episode, spoilers about this movie. This movie's been out for like less than 2 weeks, so if you have not seen it, we will be talking about the whole movie here. And also just a forewarning to all the Dino Bros out there. These are just our opinions. Please don't come for us. I don't know what Fia's opinions are, but I know mine are generally not good. So don't come for us. Feel free to share your opinions in a respectful way on the YouTube version of this episode or on our Twitter as well. But so I guess I want to start off. Sophia, have you seen all the other movies?
So I was yesterday years old when I learned that there are older versions of the Jurassic series. So no, I have only seen the newer versions.
So you didn't know there was Jurassic Park?
Nope. I knew that there was Jurassic Park. Wait, did they not do a remake of Jurassic Park?
So this is the 6th movie.
Right.
And it went Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
The original one.
Okay.
Jurassic Park, The Lost World.
Mm-hmm.
Jurassic Park 3. And so Jurassic Park 1 was in 1992 or 93. Jurassic Park, The Lost World, I believe was 96 or 97. And Jurassic Park 3, I think was 02 or 03. And then there was a break. And then in 2015, Jurassic World came out with Chris Pratt. Then I think in 2018, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom came out. And then this year, the year of our Lord 2022, Jurassic World Dominion came out. So have you seen?
I've missed some. There's been some gaps in what I've seen.
Okay.
I've seen, I think, Jurassic World 3 or Jurassic Park 3, sorry. Jurassic
World. The one
World,
with the Spinosaurus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jurassic World, didn't know that they made another Jurassic World.
That's okay.
And here we are.
Frankly, you didn't miss much.
Good.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was bad. I've talked about it before on the channel. It was a bad movie. But
yeah,
I will give, since you said you've seen the first one with Chris Pratt.
Mm-hmm.
So I will give you an incredibly quick synopsis, because that was also the case with my wife when we went to see this. So, long story short, the island that the park has always been on, for this entire time. If you read the books, you know this, but they don't, I think, ever they might mention it once in the original Jurassic Park movie, but that's actually a volcanic island. They heat the facility and power the facility with geothermal energy, which is really cool, but they never talk about it. So in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, the volcano is about to erupt, and there's a whole thing where it's like the animals are all just freely living on this island, and there's a whole thing whether it's like, well, technically, I guess they're endangered species if you want to be technical about it. So it's like, do we save them? Because they're man-made, is it right to save them, or should we just let them all die?
Yeah.
A really interesting philosophical question that is never really explored in the movie.
What's their answer?
No, but for greed type reasons masqueraded as good reasons. There's a very contrived plot about the greed reason is that they're being taken off the island to be sold as like living weapons ? or auctioned off to whoever for whatever purpose they see fit. So they more or less are all centrally located in the Pacific Northwest, because the guy from the original Jurassic Park actually had a partner that is never mentioned. I don't even think he is mentioned in the books, so I don't think there was any real basis for that. But he had a partner that I guess they had a falling out or whatever. And what you learn by the end of the movie is that guy had a daughter who died, so he cloned her into a character who is his daughter, his quote unquote granddaughter. That probably makes this movie make a whole lot more sense.
Yes, it does.
And by the end of the movie, all the dinosaurs escape onto now the mainland United States, and then through that black market trade, they have made it all the way around the world. So that is where we are at the start of this movie.
Okay.
So, I'm going to go through just my synopsis that I loosely wrote. And I mentioned to Fia, so we took notes in different ways. I had like a little tiny notebook that I wrote in the dark of the movie theater. So there may be points where I cannot read my own handwriting. Fia was smart and just put her phone on like super dim mode.
Yeah.
And can actually read her notes.
Yep.
So the movie starts off with the Mosasaurus, the giant aquatic reptile, basically eating a crab boat in the Bering Sea. And that's basically how the movie starts, more or less. No context, just to be like, hey, just a reminder, all these animals are just out living in the world. And I'll spoil this right now. We don't see the Mosasaurus again until the very end of the movie.
Right? That was so weird.
Which really bothered me. Because I feel like they were like, oh, this one was extremely popular in Jurassic World, the first one with Chris Pratt. And to make money, we have to put it in this movie.
Yeah.
to be able to sell toys of this thing, we need to put it in the movie somehow. And also, the fact that it's in the Bering Sea, Alaska, also really confused me.
I have so much just confusion with the climate. The climate just confused me throughout the whole movie.
It's like, yeah. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But yeah, so this thing eats a crab boat for some reason, presumably to get the crabs, which I'm sure some mosasaurs ate, like the relatives of this thing, but definitely not this thing. Like there are definitely species of mosasaur with like really rounded, like crushing type teeth, but this is not one of them. And then it cuts to, opening credits or logo or whatever. And then there's literally a now this clip. Like those ones that you see on, if you're a boomer like me and still use Facebook. If you know what now this is, there's a literally branded now this clip about the dinosaurs just living out and about. And that's how they introduce that. Basically, that's how, if you missed the last movie, they show you dinosaurs are out and about now.
Yeah.
And they mention also a national park, which does not exist. They mentioned Big Rock National Park, which is not a thing.
Okay, cool. I turned to my friend and I was like, hey, do you know where Big Rock is? The national park. And he's like, oh, I thought it was just made up. And I was like, oh, no, I feel like there is one. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm completely wrong.
And actually, the only reason I know that is because I was looking up national parks for something else today. And no, there is not a Big Rock National Park.
Okay.
Then we are introduced also through this clip. So all of this next little section is information that is revealed through this clip. So Biosyn, which I think maybe got mentioned in Jurassic Park. Maybe. Definitely in the book. I don't know if it was ever said out loud in the first movie. But the guy... So it's probably been a while since you've seen the original Jurassic Park, right, Fia?
Oh, yeah. So long.
So the whole inciting incident of the movie is the computer guy, Dennis Nedry, is given a can of Barbasol from guy from other company to steal dinosaur embryos so that this other company can catch up on the cloning technology that InGen, the company that made all of the dinosaurs, has. So the guy who gave Dennis Nedry the can of Barbasol is a character in this movie. His name is Dodgson. For the rest of this episode, I will be referring to him as Tim Cook, because that is the vibe they were going for, and I couldn't help myself from writing it down.
That's what my friend Matt said too.
Like, they very much made him Tim Cook, Steve Jobs, all the rich, quote unquote eccentric, every rich person genius stereotype that exists, they crammed into this human.
Spot on.
Yeah. So Biosyn set up a preserve in Italy, in like the Alps or something, for all the dinosaurs to be put in, ? Even though they tried that on an island and it didn't seem to work. We are shown some illegal breeding facilities in Colorado. And that's when we sort of transition to the actual characters that we are familiar with. So Claire, the boss lady from Jurassic World, and then also Owen Wilson's girl. Owen Wilson? Nope. His name is Owen in the movie. And for some reason, Owen Wilson came
Owen
up.
Wilson. Nice.
Chris Pratt's girlfriend? Wife? Unsure.
Yeah. She
turned eco-terrorist, more or less, which there is a bit of progression to that in the last movie. In Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, she runs a nonprofit focused on saving the dinosaurs, getting them off the island before it explodes. So there is a bit of a transition to that, but she is literally like eco-terrorizing, freeing all these dinosaurs from this breeding facility with the veterinarian from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. We never see her again. She does not come back. The veterinarian does not.
Yep.
Which is a shame, because I thought it was at least an interesting concept. But no, she's, after this one scene at the beginning of the movie, she's gone. They basically steal a Triceratops baby from this facility, and as they're putting it in the thing, they say, "Support the head," like a baby. It was very strange. Yeah, very strange.
I remember that.
There's a lot of really random quotes that, and to be fair,
you put quotes. I should have put quotes.
I put some direct quotes. Some of them may be actual quotes. Some of them may be what was going through my mind. Unsure. Yeah. I don't plan on seeing this movie again for a long time. So that will be left unsaid, whether they were real quotes or just things that happened in my brain. We are then introduced to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I believe. Just they keep calling it the DFW. I assume that's what it stands for. Which is a federal agency that I think is made up in this movie, specifically to be like the dinosaur handlers. And we then, so after Claire and the veterinarian and also the tech guy, also from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, they escape with the Triceratops and basically turn it over to the DFW. They're the ones, like I said, handling all the dinosaur wrangling out in the world. So from there in Colorado, we cut to the Sierras in California, and it's snowy, which, depending on the time of year, happens. However, by the end of the movie, there is not snow. So sure. And then we cut to a scene of Owen, Chris Pratt, ranching Parasaurolophus, like literally riding a horse and like cowboying them. Even though these are animals that are only slightly smaller than like an elephant.
Yeah.
Like these are really big animals.
Yeah.
And underneath that, in my notes, I just say physics doesn't work in this movie.
Nope.
Because he's on a horse.
Make that assumption.
Yeah. He's on a horse and he lassos this thing around the neck, around its gigantic like head crest.
Yeah.
Because if you're familiar with Parasaurolophus, it's the like duck-billed dinosaur with a really long tube coming off the back of its head. He somehow gets it around its neck, around that, and then ties it to like the little hook on the front of the saddle like you would a cow. And instead of picking up that horse like it would, because again, this is an animal the size of an elephant, he stops it. I think he ends up getting pulled. I think he gets pulled off
Yeah,
the horse and
he
then like
gets
loops
flung
it
off. Yeah.
around like a tree trunk that
Hmm.
like would that physics didn't happen there.
No.
Um, and then he's sort of always he is just like the dinosaur whisperer because he just holds up his hand to it and it's like, oh, okay,
You will
you're
obey
cool,
me.
yeah. And then he just walks up and pets it and then hooks it on and then rides his horse wherever, towing this thing behind him, and it just follows him for some reason.
Yeah.
Um,
Dinosaur
so
whisperer.
exactly, he's wrangling that, and then we cut to somewhere else in the Sierras where we have Maisie, the little clone girl, and this is a number of years later, after Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. So she's a bit older, but Maisie is her name, and she's actually the dinosaur whisperer because she's like riding her bike through a town, and then kind of out of nowhere, a giant sauropod, presumably an Apatosaurus or Diplodocus, just wanders through a like a lumber yard or something,
Mhm.
which like that's not an unreasonable thing. But then she's just like goes and sees it and then goes like whisper, whisper, whisper. I think there's no like dialogue for this part. It's just like dramatic, uplifting music. And she like whispers to the foreman dude who cracks a flare, and for some reason the dinosaurs just follow that.
I know. I was so confused. I was like, okay, I
They do
guess
that
it
a couple
works.
of times. Yeah, they do that a couple of times in this movie. However, that's only been a thing for T-Rex in the past movies. They've done that for T-Rex a couple of times because they established in the first one that it is attracted to like the movement and the light. But it's
Mhm.
like I guess that's just a thing for all the dinosaurs.
Big assumption.
Right. Um, and then the next line in my notes is just teenage clone emo drama, which then to the movie's credit immediately got called out in the movie.
Yep.
Like I don't remember which character said it, but they were like, "You're just being a teenager." I think she might have even said that. Maisie did, but she's very much like, "No one understands me," because she's wanted by Biosyn among many other people
Yeah.
because Claire and Owen basically kidnapped her. I
For
believe,
her own
yeah, the
good.
grandpa died. The grandpa died in the events of the last movie. So, and also the person who I think presumably would have become her guardian also died.
Mm.
So unclear whether it's like how kidnappy it is. It's probably still kidnappy. Um,
Yeah.
but she's being wanted because she is a human clone, which A is just very unethical, and B, they want to like understand how that was able to happen because cloning is real hard. Even though they've been cloning dinosaurs, for some reason, they haven't cloned people yet.
Right.
Like if you can make
If you
dinosaurs
can do
from
something that big, yeah.
right, you'd think cloning humans wouldn't be particularly hard at that point. But that is the theme of this movie, where it's like things that aren't hard that don't make sense to be hard in universe are really hard, but things that can happen in the real world are not.
Yeah.
So, or I guess no, I guess that's not quite right. Everything is really hard in this movie when it doesn't make sense for it to be. Because they talk about what in the real world is CRISPR many times without actually calling it that, and they
Right.
act like
That's
that's
what I was
some
thinking
new
too.
thing. Yeah, and we'll get there when we talk about more of the sciencey stuff.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
but yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Um, so then also around the Sierras, we cut to Blue, the only surviving Velociraptor from the first Jurassic World movie, who somehow has a baby,
She just cloned itself.
which is not particularly uncommon in reptiles. It's not even like unknown from birds, so I would buy that. That can happen. Um, yeah, it's called
Yeah.
parthenogenesis, when animals can more or less clone themselves. There are even a number of species of lizard who
Yeah.
only reproduce that way.
I was gonna
Um,
say I think they mentioned that like her genes were like spliced with some lizard that does that
yeah,
too.
Which they didn't even need to say that, because, like I said, I would for sure believe that there were some dinosaurs capable of it.
Okay.
But instead of taking a minute to actually explain some neat science, they're like, nope, she's just special because
Yeah.
she's a named character. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so Blue has a baby who they call Beta. And that's just established. You see them running through the woods. I think they hunt something. And then we cut to Western Texas, where there's giant bugs now,
Uh,
is what my
my
notes say.
worst fear. My worst fear.
Yeah. So we have more or less like crow-ish, maybe a little smaller sized locusts.
Oh, I feel like they're bigger than a crow. Well, maybe same size as a crow.
Okay. Yeah, so that roughly that size of bird sized locusts, which also I definitely agree is like one of the worst things I can possibly imagine.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not even like really afraid of bugs that much, but man,
Yeah.
like in a swarm of them like that, yeah, that would really freak me out.
Yeah.
So we see that this has become a problem. They are just like swarming around, eating all the crops.
They attack these two little kids, right?
Yeah, although they don't. The kids seem to be fine.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, definitely
the
trauma.
locusts. Well, yes, but the locusts like at one point one of them like crashes through a barn door.
Yep.
Sure. And then after a while they seem to go away. And then Ellie Sattler, the female lead of the first Jurassic Park movie, who we saw a little bit in Jurassic Park 3. She was in a little bit, but she was kind of like out of the game. She was clearly like no longer teaching, or at least not out in the field or really working with Alan Grant, the main-ish character of the first Jurassic Park movie. So she comes and like sort of is just investigating what's going on. Why she in particular is there was a little unclear, because she was a paleobotanist, like plants.
Yeah.
And I think somewhere in the movie it said that she was more or less working for like an environmental company, which I kind of buy. I guess if you have a PhD in paleontology, you probably know about environments and things like that. So not super unreasonable.
Mm-hmm. It made sense
suspicious, to me. Yeah. Suspiciously, there's one field over from where the locusts were that didn't get eaten. And the person whose crops got eaten tells Ellie that those crops were from biosyn seeded plants. So biosyn, I guess, is just doing all sorts of genetic stuff, not just the dinosaur stuff. Because they never established that either, where it's like, this is where you learn that they do other things. That wasn't really ever explained before this. So,
and this is where I am trying to grasp how, well, I guess my first thought at this was like, how can they train these animals to only eat this certain type of crop? But I guess the way you would do that is by putting something that tastes bad in the other crop.
Right. I wouldn't think it would be like trained. It would probably just be how, similar to how like, what is it? Monarch butterflies really like milkweed.
Right. Yep.
Similar sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't find that uncredible. In fact, I was like, no, that's definitely something a large mega corporation would do. I'm like,
I definitely think they could do it. I was just trying. Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's definitely like something that seems like evil people would do, or people taking advantage. I just was like wondering about the mechanism, but that never was explained.
After that, we cut to it doesn't say, but probably Montana, because that's where we see in the first couple Jurassic Park movies that Dr. Alan Grant works. This is where he comes back, and we see him lecturing students that look very bored. They're like in a pit digging for fossils, and he's like lecturing at them, which is a very field paleontologist thing to do, but it looks also potentially like there's like a volunteer group out there, a school group or something that isn't paleontologists that are just kind of out, and they look very bored, which I thought was a little funny because I'm like, yeah, that seems about right for most people.
Yeah.
Where it's like you think you're going to be finding, a T-Rex skeleton every other day, but that is not the case.
Yeah. I wish I had wrote down the quote that he said there. Um,
Yeah,
that
I don't have it either.
it was like something about like science is like discovering the
Mm.
truth or something like
Yeah,
that.
it was something like in these rocks are the truth or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Which like as a geologist I can appreciate, but I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bit much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
They were yeah. They said something about that and I was like, this seems dramatic, but like low key true.
right, yeah. But man, those people were so bored.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which I mean, non-scientists going to a science lecture, yeah, you'd probably be bored.
Yep.
So, uh, Ellie sees him out in the field because she is like, okay, I want a second opinion because she got one of the locusts and is like, hey, I want you to identify this for me. And they haven't seen each other in a long time. They do the awkward, been a while, eh?
Yeah. Wait, question. Do you know why he went into his little tent and like
mhm.
grabbed this like picture and like hid it?
I don't think so. There was a picture of the two of them together. I don't think he
Okay.
wanted her to see that he still had it. Maybe it was like embarrassing or something.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was her because I couldn't see it
Yeah.
very well.
hmm
Okay. Cool.
And it was very quickly established right after that she is now divorced because, of course, she is.
Yeah.
Um, because in Jurassic Park 3, she was married and had at least one kid. Um, and so, yeah. So
Gotta throw some
she's
romance in there.
unnecessarily, in my opinion.
Unnecessary. Oh, for sure. For sure.
And so she goes and gets his opinion on this locust, on what it is, which, number one, like, I don't find inherently weird. I don't think that he wouldn't know what it is. If most people came to me, like even like as a vertebrate person, if you came to me with some kind of bug, I could probably give you a rough guess of what it is. I couldn't tell you like a species, but I can tell you that yeah, it's a locust. Um, but I'm like she should also be able to do that, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So that was just a little odd. But what I found really funny were the words that he used to be like, "Yup, that's a locust." He was like, I wrote this down. This is a quote. He says, mandibles, wings, thorax, something, something. Yup, that's a locust. And I'm like, what?
They
The
all so many bugs have that.
wings and thorax, literally all bugs have that. That's part of the definition of being an insect.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So I'm like, oh, here's science words about bugs. We'll throw those in. Like
Yeah.
whoever was the science advisor for this movie, I'm not gonna say you did a bad job. Maybe you just weren't listened to. Um, Whoever supervised and made the decisions based off of the science advisor, I think you did a bad job. Uh, um, they also say, and for some reason, Alan knows this by just looking at it. He says something something. It has genes extinct since the Cretaceous. How do you know that?
Right.
Like, what does that even mean? And like I guess in universe, yes, they do have DNA from the Cretaceous period. I guess that kind of makes sense. But just by looking at it, what does that mean?
I guess maybe only by the size of it that he was thinking
Maybe,
that.
but even then, like the biggest that insects were not in the Cretaceous, or even close to that
Oh,
big.
I see.
And also, just a quick side note, I don't think it's even like physiologically possible for insects to be that large in like the environment of Earth today.
Because why?
Um, so with insects, their size is more or less limited by the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. They don't have like an
Oh.
active breathing system like vertebrates do. So they just have little tiny holes all along their body, and oxygen just passively flows into the, or air just passively flows into those. And if there's more oxygen in the air, that is just more oxygen available to them, because they have a good circulatory system. They don't have a great respiratory system. So if there's more oxygen in the atmosphere, that just allows them to grow bigger, because otherwise their tissues don't get as much oxygen as they need. So
Cool.
that is likely not possible to have an insect that large. At least to be as active and doing things as these are. Little extra science there.
Nice.
And I don't think they come right out and say it, but it's very heavily now said that the locusts were basically made by biosyn, is what they sort of conclude. Dun dun dun. Oh no, giant company doing bad things. How original. And then we also learn in this scene that Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, works at biosyn. And they're going to go off to meet him. I guess Ellie had been invited to go see a lecture from him at like biosyn's facility in Italy. And she's like, I guess I can bring a +1. We'll see what happens. So those two head off to Italy to go reunite with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, they put so much like hints into like that invitation was in some way sexual, and I don't really.
Oh, for sure. Because that was
it.
Well, because he was kind of into her in Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Yeah, that was definitely like a very small subplot of the first Jurassic Park movie.
Got it. I missed that over my head.
Yep. So after that, we cut back to the Sierras with Owen, Maisie, and Claire. And Owen has basically been working with the DFW. That's what he's been ranching these dinosaurs for. But we see very quickly that Beta, Blue's little baby velociraptor, gets stolen by some poachers. And then suddenly Maisie is also stolen because she's being a rebellious teenager and going into town. And she, I think, she saw that Beta had been captured, went to get to chase after them, and then she got captured as well.
Yep.
So, and I say baby stolen because of course it is. That's literally the only purpose that this animal serves in this movie. And I'll circle around to that toward the end. But then we cut to Franklin, who is the tech guy from the last movie, and also he drove the getaway van earlier in the movie. He now works at the CIA? Question mark? And also, seemingly, it's been like 2 weeks since we've seen him. So when he drove the getaway van, he said something about, I can't do this anymore. I'm starting a real job or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's presumably only been a couple of weeks because like there's still snow in the Sierras compared to like when they started and stuff. But somehow he already knows so much. Like he had so much information. He was like, oh yeah, we're doing a sting operation in Malta to catch these dinosaur poachers. You're already familiar with one of the guys who was the guy that Owen trained the velociraptors with, who now like also works for the CIA. He's like undercover, and they're gonna, go arrest some poachers who they suspect of having Maisie. Who Owen and Claire suspect of having Maisie. Franklin's like, you guys can't get involved, and then helps them get involved. So they fly up off to Malta, and then we never see Franklin again. Franklin's now done. So they go to Malta with the and meet up with the guy from the first Jurassic World that he trained the velociraptors with, which I think was a good callback. Like I liked his character from the first one, but one of the few positive things I'll say about this movie. So again, there were a lot of cuts in this movie that were a little jarring because they have so many characters going on. That was a little hard to follow.
Right.
Because now we're now in Italy with Ellie and Alan Grant. and we see as they're sort of being helicoptered in some Dreadnoughtus, which is a really, really big, especially big species of sauropod in a lake, which I thought um, they had to know that they were doing this. So sauropods in a lake is a very old paleontology trope, especially like paleontology media trope.
What's that
Um,
mean?
just like a thing that is always done, and
Oh,
especially
okay.
now like incorrectly, because originally in like the 30s and 40s and stuff, when people were first making like movies about dinosaurs, it was at that time suspected. um and I mean, actually by that point I think we probably knew better, but um it was previously suspected in paleontology that sauropods were so big that by the time they got to be adults, they had to be like semi-aquatic because they wouldn't be able to support such a large body. We now know that that's not true, but because of that, it became a very common trope that when you show sauropods, they're always in lakes
Uh,
and stuff.
okay, I got
Um,
you.
and so they showed a sauropod in a lake munching on some seaweed or something, um, because that's what you do with sauropods.
Why
My next
not?
note literally says Biosyn guy Tim Cook.
Yes,
Yep.
that's him.
So he greets the two of them as they enter, and they're basically like, "Hey, I wish I could stay and chat, but I'm a busy man. I love you guys. You guys are great. Here's my dude. He's gonna show you around. Bye." And he leaves.
He seemed straight up crazy when he was talking because he would just stop mid sentence and then just move on.
Yeah. Um, if this might be a little niche because I'm sure many more people have seen this movie than the movie I'm about to reference. But if you've seen Don't Look Up on Netflix,
Yeah, I have.
the rich guy in that movie is also
Yeah,
played in the same way, where it's like very rich, eccentric, sort of genius type guy, where it's like
yeah.
quirky, but in a way that everyone loves because they're a rich genius.
I didn't feel like I loved it.
Right, but everybody in universe around them is like, "Oh, he's
Gotcha.
so amazing." Um,
Right.
yeah, and so then we get to Jeff Goldblum giving a lecture, and the Alan and Ellie walk into the lecture, and as one does, just in the middle of a lecture, that's extremely rude. Don't do that. Um,
That
and
is very rude.
my next note just says Jeff Goldblum, perfect as always.
Oh, my favorite, by far, favorite
I
character
love
in the
Jeff
movie.
Goldblum so much.
He was just such a refreshing everything.
Yeah, and so um, Jeff Goldblum's character, Ian Malcolm. I'm probably just going to call him Jeff Goldblum for the rest of for the rest of this episode.
Yeah, that's fine.
So his character has always been the Michael Crichton character. So Michael Crichton is the original author of Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park: The Lost World, because there was actually a second book as well. But he also wrote a lot of other books, and almost all of them, the general theme is unintended consequences of science.
Hmm.
That's like the general theme of all of his works. So he is sort of the stand-in character for Michael Crichton. Um, and so he is given the same unintended consequences message that
Yeah,
his character kind of always does. And usually ends up being right in these movies, even though that's not how science works.
not always. Very
And
rarely.
by right, and by that's not how science works, I mean like we test things before we do them.
Yes.
Like very rarely do things just get out into the world. It's not like people are putting out medicines without testing them. We're not putting out new gene therapies or genetic things like this movie seems to
Yeah.
imply without them being
Yeah.
extremely rigorously tested.
Yeah.
Um, so, in a scene that I actually really liked, after the lecture, the three of them are just sort of chatting, and in like a sort of secret, almost like spy movie type thing, Ian secretly tells Ellie about the secret locust project that Bison has going on. He was told about it. Basically, he goes and like orders a coffee in like or some like espresso, and while the espresso machine is like screaming as espresso machines do, he like leans in really close and whispers it because he knows that he's like being listened to.
Hmm.
And like so, and he tells her where it is and like slips her his like pass card and everything so she can get in. Alan is none the wiser. He catches none of this and is complaining about the coffee.
It was so funny.
Yeah, that was genuinely a really cool scene. I did like that scene a
Yeah,
lot.
me too.
Mostly because it was Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah,
um, then we cut to a very quick scene of Tim Cook being suspicious.
as he does.
Um, Now we cut to Dr. Henry Wu, who is the main geneticist from the original Jurassic Park. And he's also been in, I believe, both of the Jurassic World movies before this. So he's now Biosyn's lead genetics person. And he now tries to do the right thing for once in his friggin' life. Basically being like, hey man, we shouldn't do this. We should really kill all those locusts that we have here because they're going to start like a worldwide plague. That's the big thing about the locusts is that it says, I think earlier that like, maybe Ellie says this, that they are more or less going to like cause like world famine.
Oh yeah,
Because they're just destroying all the crops that are not biosin.
yeah.
So, which is real bad because then we have nothing to eat ourselves, and then also things like our cattle don't have anything to eat.
Yep.
So now he's like, hey man, this is getting out of hand. We should really do something about this.
Yeah.
And Tim Cook has none of that.
I was so confused. Not really, but there was one point where they flashed like a screen of like what crops across like the US have already been eaten, and it seemed like a really like large amount that I just don't understand how they didn't mention any other like significant impacts that happened just because of that alone.
Right. I might have been writing my notes at that point because I don't really remember seeing that.
It might have been like a projected
Okay.
like this is what's gonna happen if they continue at this rate type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it was like it seemed like it was already to a point of becoming a problem.
Oh, for sure. And we'll talk about what happens with the locust later because it's real dumb.
Yeah, real dumb.
And so then we cut to a little earlier after Maisie got taken. We see her getting put on a plane, and Beta, the baby raptor, being put on a different plane. And we cut to the pilot who flew Beta. She sees Maisie being sort of taken away, and you can see like second thoughts kind of going on her face. We'll meet her more later, but we see some kind of apprehension on her face. Then, also in Malta, we see Owen and Claire, and they are with the CIA people in an underground dinosaur dealer, like black market, and like dinosaur dealer place with like dinosaur fights and things like that. Which I also thought was a neat scene. I really thought that it was really like not creative in the sense that like yes, obviously that kind of thing would exist. But just neat. There were lots of different kinds of animals in there, and I liked the general atmosphere. Yeah, there was a lot going on. We see lots of different animals, most of which we've seen before in previous movies. Although there's a couple highlights that I don't think we've seen. I think we've only seen one new dinosaur so far, and that was the Dreadnoughtus, the sauropod in the lake. But we see a whole lot more of new ones to the franchise coming up.
Yeah.
And so, as they're going through, they're sort of undercover, trying to blend in. They're really bad at it. For example, Claire goes to the bathroom and meets the pilot, and the pilot's basically like, "You clearly do not belong here. You should leave before you get hurt." Yep. Not in the sense that like she knew something was about to happen, just like you are clearly in the wrong place. You're going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and you're going to get murdered because you're clearly not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Claire obviously does not listen, and throughout this thing, the CIA tries to bust the dinosaur smugglers, which is the real reason why they were there, and they screw it up real bad. Like they
Oh
do
yeah.
a really bad
So
job.
bad. So
Um,
bad.
and lots of dinosaurs end up escaping and just running around Malta. Um, so
They did not secure their entrance and exits.
they sure did not. Um, so one
Shame,
of the
shame.
things, and this will probably make this scene make a lot more sense to you, Fia. One of the things from the last movie, so from Jurassic World, the first one, they had the Indominus Rex, the big mutant dinosaur thing.
Hmm.
Um, then in Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, they made sort of a miniaturized version of that explicitly for military use, where if you basically pointed a laser pointer at somebody and then like made like a clicking sound with a thing, it would hunt that person down and kill them as like its only goal, like hardwired robotic,
Ah,
basically like a Terminator robot. um
this makes
and in
sense.
this movie, yeah, in this movie they were like, we at the end of that movie that dies, obviously we don't see it in this movie. In this one, the smuggler lady's like, oh, those idiots, they didn't need to make their own dinosaurs to do that, you can just train them. Loyalty is trained, not bred, or something to that effect is what they said. And so smuggler lady, who was actually Mirage from The Incredibles, it took me a minute to
What?
realize that's who she was, but it was definitely the same person. She looks exactly the same as she does in The Incredibles. And she points a laser.
Oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
just looked at
did you
the
just look it
picture.
up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so
That's
if
very.
you can picture Mirage from Incredibles, exactly the same.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so they release these. I think there's 3 or 4 of them, called Atrociraptors, which I think I heard somebody talk about it like, before the movie came out, and I'm like, there's no way that's a real name. But it turns out that is a real dinosaur, one that we
Wow.
see for the first time in these movies. And so I think there's 4 of them, and so they get the lasers pointed at the good guys and click their button or whatever, and a big old silly chase scene ensues. Um,
Yeah.
so they chase them all around Malta, weaving in and out of the big dinosaurs that are now out, like a Carnotaurus, an Allosaurus are out just running around. And something that I actually didn't notice or didn't say yet, that we see a couple of times in the black marketplace, is they show for the first time a non-reptile extinct thing that was cloned. That would be a Dicynodon. I believe I've since I wasn't, I didn't know it well enough to identify it, but I've since seen that is probably Lystrosaurus, which is a group of animals that is not quite mammals but close. So very mammal-like, as opposed to on the dinosaur reptile side of thing, which I thought was kind of neat. They haven't
Yeah.
done that before. So
Cool.
yeah, so big chase scene ensues all across Malta. Owen's on a motorcycle. Claire's just running and somehow escaping this thing. And the CIA ends up catching Mirage. See, she is introduced like a character who's supposed to be important, and I think they say her
Yeah.
name once, and then she gets arrested and is just not seen in the rest of the movie.
She just seems very important. She carries herself as a very important person.
Yeah, well, and the movie frames her like she's supposed to be important, but just is
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So Owen and Claire end up escaping with the pilot that Claire met in the bathroom, and because I think while they were in the bathroom. Sorry if I seem a little back and forth. It's because I keep forgetting things about this movie. There's a lot of parts of the movie that are pretty forgettable.
Yeah. Ooh.
So while Claire is talking to the pilot in the bathroom, she holds up a picture of Maisie and it's like, "Have you seen her? She's my daughter. She was kidnapped. We need to find her." And the pilot was like, "Nope. Bye."
Yep.
um,
Straight up lied to her face.
yep. And so the pilot feels bad about maybe being an accomplice to a kidnapping, even if she didn't really know it. And then helps them escape Malta and escape the Atrociraptor. So Claire and Owen escape on her plane. Um, and then we also learn that Maisie is at Biosin, because by this point they didn't know that by this point. They assumed, but the pilot tells them for sure that she is in Italy at the Biosin facility.
Yeah.
And then we get some exposition with Maisie and Tim Cook and Dr. Wu that Maisie.
Mhm.
So I've actually seen mixed things about this on the internet. What I got from the movie is that she was also a parthenogenic clone. That she was not cloned by her grandpa because the mom died, which is what we were told in the last movie. That she was given birth by her mother, but was a genetic clone of her mother. So
Yeah.
I thought that it was a parthenogenesis thing, like Blue with the baby. I've since seen some people be like, no, I think she like cloned herself and then made it her baby inside of her, which is not the vibe I got.
Um, I feel like that's the parthenogenesis is what I feel like the movie was trying to portray with like the similarities between like
Yeah.
Blue, but my mind straight went to just like cloning and then inserting it into
Okay.
like herself.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Because again, we'll talk about this later. There's no reason for Blue or Beta to be in this movie. There really is just no
Yeah.
reason for them to be there. I think
Yeah.
at one point they offhandedly mentioned we need Beta to understand Maisie to understand human cloning.
Yeah. Question mark.
Sure. And so also I don't remember the context for this, but my notes just say eugenics good? I think it
I
was
don't know
Tim
what you're
Cook.
talking about there.
I think it was Tim Cook being like, because the reason why Maisie is supposedly special is because the mom had some kind of genetic disease and that's what she died from. But because it was genetic and because Maisie is a clone of her, presumably Maisie would have that genetic thing too. And the mom was able to change Maisie's DNA throughout her entire body after she was born so that Maisie no longer was affected by this. And Tim Cook was basically like, okay, I'm actually going to say the guy's name because I don't want people to think that I'm saying Tim Cook is for eugenics. Because to my knowledge, he's not. So Dodgson, the actual character's name, was basically pretty much saying we could use this to cure every kind of genetic disease and like feeling pretty eugenicsy. Like that's just the vibe I got.
Makes sense.
Because that's what a lot of that's what people who are like real concerned about CRISPR, which for anybody who's not aware, CRISPR is a real world genetic thing that basically lets you copy paste genetics in DNA. So you could take a gene from from cell A and just copy paste a specific section into cell B.
Yep.
That it, you have to know what you're doing, but it really is kind of that easy.
Fun fact, CRISPR is the reason why I decided I did not want to go to med school.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's also incredibly scary. Like, I think there's a lot of really cool things to do with it, but CRISPR is like the big thing that I think Jurassic Park kind of has a point on. Yeah. Where it's like, we really shouldn't be messing around with this kind of stuff because there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences. And one thing that's been given people a lot of pause with CRISPR is that like it could be like if you DNA test a baby while it's inside you and it turns out that baby has dwarfism. It's like, well, would like little people in the real world say that like that is like a disability or something and that should be changed? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's like that gets a little eugenicsy, deciding what your babies are going to be like.
Right.
Anywho, digression aside. So we learn that Maisie has been lied to about her entire life and that she actually did have a mom. So
gasp.
After that we see, gasp. We see Alan and Ellie sneak into the restricted section with Ian Malcolm's little card thing to get the locust DNA to prove that Bison made the locusts, which I don't understand because they already had a locust.
Yeah.
Like Ellie brought Alan a dead locust to identify it.
I guess to match that DNA came from the facility.
I guess, but like then that's just like their word, that's just like word of mouth.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So they sneak into the locust room, dressed as, in like lab coats and like medical gear, stuff like that. And we learn that Wu, even though despite what him and Dodgson had told Maisie while they were doing their exposition bit, Wu goes and talks to her and actually says that he wants to use her to somehow fix the locusts because her thing, how her mom fixed her genetic thing, was the key to fixing the locusts, like modifying the DNA of living locusts. Which at this point is when I was like, that's just CRISPR.
Yeah.
Like you can just do that now.
Yep. I guess they weren't expecting that to be a real world situation yet.
Right. Well, I'm like, okay, that should be a thing that like their science advisor should tell them, like, that already exists. Like that's the thing. But that's not plot convenient, I guess. So after that, we cut to Dodgson in the sort of control center, and they're like, we have an unauthorized plane coming in. And he realizes that it's probably, I think he like got some reports or something from Malta to be like, oh, Maisie's parents are on their way or something. And so he turns off sort of the aerial system that keeps the pterosaurs inside the valley and just keeps them from flying away. He turns that off. And then, because this is an action movie, a Quetzalcoatlus, which is an extremely large flying pterosaur, just comes and attacks their plane. And like, yes, Quetzalcoatlus is extremely big. Not nearly as big as it's in this movie.
They make it smaller than it is?
No, they make it much bigger.
Ah.
So its wingspan was, I think, somewhere in the range of like 35 feet.
Okay.
Which is really big. That's the size of like a small plane. This was like a cargo plane, like a big, big cargo plane. And just because it's flying in the same air as it attacks them and just rips the plane right apart.
For fun.
And this was, and then flies away immediately. Like it's on screen for a total of maybe 30 seconds. And this was the point where I was like, where I want to talk about a lot of the new animals they introduce here. Because some of them are really cool. Quetzalcoatlus looked really cool. It's a really cool animal. On the ground, it's like the size of a giraffe and yet could still fly. Wow. Super cool animal. But they don't have them do anything besides be a monster and then leave.
Yeah.
Which really bothers me. That's what they did with the Atrociraptors. That's what they did with the Dicynodont, because in the brief second, the mammal cousin, in the brief time that it's on screen, it bites somebody, and this thing is like roughly the size of a cat. And it just chomps right onto somebody's hand for seemingly no reason. So all of these animals that could be really cool if you just let them be a normal animal, show up, attack things for 10 seconds, and then leave and are never shown again.
Yeah, I guess they were going for more diversity, less ecology.
Right, and it's like, they've all been brought to this place, so it's like, I don't expect there to be too much in the way of like an, ecosystem, even though they talk about that later. But like, to just show up, have them be a monster, and then leave, I think there's a real disservice to these really cool animals.
Yeah. Big
But
time.
anyway, yeah, it attacks the plane. Plane crashes, and there's only one parachute for plot reasons. Um, Owen sends Claire because he's like, Maisie needs her mom. You're her mom. You gotta get her. You gotta get out of here. So Claire parachutes out, and the plane crashes. I will say some of the cinematography in this movie was actually really good. Um, Her parachuting looked really cool. They put like basically a GoPro locked onto her face, and she was like, I think actually falling.
Yeah.
Like I think they like actually dropped her in a seat out of a plane, which is real cool. Um, and As she was parachuting down, some pterosaurs came and like attacked the parachute and things, which is a callback to Jurassic Park 3. But she lands safe-ish in the forest. But the plane crashes with the pilot and Owen. And I keep calling her the pilot because at this point I think they've said her name once, and I
Yeah, I
didn't
don't remember her name.
pay attention. I want to say it's Kayla or Kyla,
Maybe.
but she's had a decent amount of screen time by this point, and they've said her name once. And she's also the only like significant person of color in this movie, and I'm like, please let me know their name.
I looked it up and it is Kayla Watts.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
After the plane crashes, onto like a glacier, it seems. We see Ellie and Maisie, Ellie and Alan. They get their sample of the locusts, who all freak out because one of them, is basically getting attacked. They take like a tissue sample from it, and so in their little habitat room, they're all like swarming around, doing stuff because they've been disturbed, which makes sense. Ellie and Alan fall out of the room, and Ellie falls on top of Alan in that classic romantic trope where like they're laying on the floor, she's like on his chest, and then Maisie kind of walks around the corner because by this point she's like up and left, with nobody seemingly noticing at first, and she was like, "Oh hey, I know you guys. You guys were out at the first Jurassic Park." They were like, "Yeah, we were. Who were you?" And then I think Ellie is the one who was like, "You're Maisie Lockwood," and she's like, "Yep, sure am." And then they team up and escape.
Nice.
Claire is now in the forest, and this was also a scene that I really enjoyed, just from like a cinematic perspective. Mm-hmm. There is an old blind, it's called a Therizinosaurus. Really, really cool animal. Only slightly smaller than T-Rex in terms of like body size, but has these, instead of having teeny tiny arms like T-Rex has, it has these giant arms with giant like 3-foot long claws on each arm. It has 3-foot long claws on each hand. Super cool animal, but it was herbivorous, which is the weird part. And so they established that it's blind, and seemingly pretty territorial, because it like just like swats a deer with its giant claws, seemingly for no reason, and also the deer just kind of stood there and let it happen.
Yeah, like completely oblivious to this giant.
Oh yeah,
creature.
And I'm like, I've been deer hunting before. Deer are kind of dumb, but they're not that dumb.
No.
But they do a really good job of making it spooky. So, at one point, Claire, basically to escape it because it is hearing her, not really being able to see her, she like stays under the water, and there's a scene where like the camera starts above water and then like pans down through the water, and the Therizinosaurus is like screaming above the top of the lake, like right above it, and she's like holding her breath underwater, covering her ears or something. It doesn't make sense from like an animal perspective, from like how an animal would behave, but still a cool cinematic shot, I think.
I was confused about the climate there, and I don't know if this is just my ignorance of like what is in Italy, but it just seemed a bit too swampy for that climate, and I don't know if that's true or not.
I also don't know. So this is supposed to be in presumably the Alps in northern Italy. I would assume.
Yeah.
And yeah, like in this scene, it looks almost like a rainforest because like
Oh
there's this
yeah.
like, or maybe like a redwood forest, but still with lots of water. Like really tall trees.
Yeah.
A big enough swampy area for Claire to be completely underwater in. Um, and then the immediate next scene is the plane crash, which is on a frozen lake.
Yep. It's so confusing.
So
Like
yeah, I
what?
I don't really know what the Alps are like either.
Also, dino question.
Yeah,
Um, can dinosaurs live in icy cold climates?
depends what kind, but it's generally thought yes.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there is definitely evidence for it.
Okay.
Not year round, likely. Or I should say, the poles would get cold in the winter because even back then, during the winter they would still have their you know months of total darkness where the sun just doesn't come up.
Hmm.
So during that time, it would be real cold. But during the summer, it would be, significantly warmer than even like Alaska in the summer is today. And Alaska in the summer can be like 70 degrees. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, so we do have pretty good evidence that animals were living up there, year round.
Okay, that makes me feel better about seeing
Yeah.
the
The next
dinosaurs
scene.
in the ice. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the plane crashed on the frozen lake, the pilot and I guess Kayla and Owen are both completely fine. They make a big deal out of giving Claire the parachute, like a really big deal, and then they're both just fine.
Yeah.
Like not literally not even a scratch. They just walk out of the plane as it's like sort of sinking through the ice. Um, and they are attacked by a it's called a pyroraptor, which is the first time we see like a fully feathered, like a velociraptor type dinosaur in this franchise,
How do you feel about that?
which I appreciate their attempt at accuracy. And this probably is the most accurate depiction of a dinosaur that they've had. Um, because like the feathers looked decent, the hands and
Yeah.
arms were actually like anatomically correct. Um,
Cool.
the face was a little weird. It was like pointy and like very like snarly,
Hmm.
like it probably wasn't in real life. Um, but from like the
Yeah.
face back, I think it looked really good.
Yeah. I
And then
was
they
really
have it
excited at
do,
that point.
yeah, and then they do something really stupid.
Oh.
So
Okay.
as they are running from this thing, like there's a crack in the ice, and the Pyroraptor's just like, okay, literally dives through the ice into the water and is
Oh
flapping its
yeah.
arms and swimming underwater and also swimming sort of side to side like a crocodile.
I see
Um,
why this is bad now.
yeah. So it's swimming under the ice um, as fast or faster as Owen and Kayla are running at the surface. And I'm not saying these things couldn't swim. That we have really good evidence that dinosaurs broadly could swim. It's very rare that like a vertebrate can't swim. Um, but to be able to swim like basically a penguin, more or less underwater, that's a little far. And as they are escaping through like a dam that has this frozen lake sort of stopped up before it gets down into the valley that's swampy, it bursts up through the ice to attack them. It like misses and they get away. Um, they took one of the coolest dinosaurs in the movie and they made it do something real stupid. Like that just I I remember seeing that because they actually had that in a preview of it, like the scene where it like swoop just goes under the ice. And I remember seeing
Hmm.
that for the first time, being like, okay, I guess that's what this movie's gonna be.
Yeah.
All right, I still have a lot of notes left. We're already an hour in. I'm gonna speed it up.
Okay.
And so then we cut to Ellie, Maisie, and Alan, and we learn that Ellie and Maisie's mom, Charlotte, the scientist who cloned herself, they knew each other conveniently. And it was pretty much like your mom loved you even if you were a clone of her. Don't worry. Trying to like reassure Maisie. I don't know. It was weird. They're escaping in like the Biosin facility, like metro system, more or less. Tim Cook realizes this and stops them, like from like the control center. And our hero trio basically tries to escape into the old mines that just happened to be where the metro thing stopped at. And it is also around this time that Tim Cook realizes that Ian, Jeff Goldblum, helped them and fires him. So he is now fired. So
nice.
Yeah. Cut back to Owen and the pilot find Claire's parachute down in the valley, and they run into a T-Rex, because that also has to be in this movie. And around this time, they also run into the Giganotosaurus, which this movie says multiple times is the largest land predator the world has ever seen. And it's like, I mean, technically, yeah, by maybe like a couple 100 pounds. It's the same size as T-Rex. It's basically the same.
That's funny. They put so much emphasis on that.
Yeah, they really did. I think Owen says it, or no, it's Kayla says it, because Owen was like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
Kayla says, and then later Alan Grant says it, and I'm like a little, and it this was something that I actually was like, "Good job, movie." So this is a credit to this movie, where they the T-Rex and Giganotosaurus fight for like just a couple seconds, roar at each other, and then the T-Rex leaves. I'm like, thank you. That's how like actual animals fight.
Nice. Territory.
For the most most part, it's like for the most part they won't even actually fight. They'll just yell at each other until one leaves. Yep. Especially like different species like this, where it's like they're not fighting over a mate or something. Yeah, I'm like, thank you, movie. Actual animal behavior for the first time in a very long time in these movies. Thank you. It doesn't last long.
No.
So, back to our people in the mines. And if it sounds confusing that we're cutting back and forth, you're not wrong. It was also kind of jarring in the movie.
Yeah.
Back to the mines with Alan, Ellie, and Maisie. So, we see that they are being hunted by some Dimetrodon. Also, a really cool addition, because that is, like I said, a mammal relative rather than a like on the dinosaur side of things. So really cool to see. Although they also are just being monstery for reasons. Ian saves them. I think he saw on like a computer screen while he was being fired where they were, and so he, for some reason or somehow, knows where to go to like the outside of the mine. He lets them out with help from, I also forgot to mention a character. It's like he's like the assistant to Tim Cook.
Yes, I forget his name.
His name was Ramsey.
Okay.
So he was sort of the one helping around Ellie and Alan the whole time they were there. So as Ian is there, he's trying to remember the punch code. This was also a little bit of a funny scene. He's trying to remember the punch code to open the door, but he didn't remember it. And then Ramsey just from the control center just like pushed a button and the door opened, and Ian Malcolm's like, I knew I'd get it. Or something like that.
Yep.
Cut back to Claire, because she is now she has escaped the Therizinosaurus. She finds a security station somewhere down in the valley. Almost got by some Dilophosaurus, which we have not actually seen since the very first Jurassic Park movie, so that was a cool callback. Those are the ones with that spit venom that don't actually spit venom, that had a big frill that don't actually have a frill. Owen saves her, and Claire and Owen are reunited with Kayla the pilot third wheeling.
Nice.
It is at this point that for some reason, I guess, Tim Cook starts to realize that locusts are bad. That the
I
locusts
think
were
he
not a
just
good
thinks he's
idea.
gonna get caught. I think he thinks he's gonna get caught.
That realistically, probably yeah. I think that's right. So he tries to burn the evidence by just like there's some like automated flamethrowers in the locust room,
Right, because why not?
which I, as like someone who's like been to like some scientific facilities, I didn't find inherently incorrect.
I guess I
Um,
wouldn't put a fire. I would use some sort of like gas or pesticide that would kill them.
right, but I think he was also trying to just get rid of the evidence as
Oh,
well.
true, true. Yeah.
Um,
Okay, makes sense.
yeah. So the locusts are swarming now on fire because fire does not seem to deter them, um, and somehow escape their containment, even though they're all on fire. They like bust through the glass that was also the ceiling that we didn't see before, um, and they escape into the valley. And as they die from the swarm, they're dropping into the valley on fire and setting things on fire. The
Yep.
original trio. So this by this point, this would be Ellen, Ellie, Maisie, and Ian. Um, they happen to stumble into Owen, Claire, and Kayla.
Yes.
Like literally pure coincidence. Like there was no actual like plot reason why they found each other. They just did. Um,
Hmm.
and during this touching, reuniting moment between Owen, Claire, and Maisie, the Giganotosaurus, the supposed biggest thing around, shows up again. And this scene
This
really confused me.
uh this scene also very got underneath my skin. Probably not for the same reasons as you, but
Hit me.
as
What do you got?
the dinosaur is approaching, all of the men uh just like puff up their chests and like move towards the front and like hold their arms out like as if like that's gonna do anything for this dinosaur. And it just
um,
made me very mad in the sexist
so
moment.
yeah, I hear you. I will say in Owen's defense, that is what he does with every dinosaur he encounters.
True. True.
There was a scene he did that with Blue earlier in the movie. He did that with at the same time a Carnotaurus and an Allosaurus, both you know, really not giant like T-Rex, but big carnivorous dinosaurs. And for some reason, that stalls them for a second or two. And he does that to this one, not to the same extent, but definitely.
Yeah.
But the reason why this scene bothered me was that so it was very clearly established that the Therizinosaurus was blind.
Hmm.
That was very clearly established. It was that nothing happened like that with the Giganotosaurus, this big one here.
Hmm.
But for some reason, it couldn't see them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like all of them, all seven of them, are just standing there when it moseys up. And I think at first, Alan and Owen both like simultaneously like jinx say, "Don't move" or something to that effect. Um, and, in the first Jurassic Park movie, they establish incorrectly, but at least they give an in-universe reason for it, that the T-Rex can't see you if you don't move. They established that. They never do that with
Yeah,
this one. They never do that with this
I guess they're
particular
just
dinosaur.
they're just piggybacking off of it.
Yeah, but it's like there were a couple times that like it definitely should be able to see them and just doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was bad editing or cinematography or what, but it definitely should have been able to see them and just does not. That happens like 4 or 5 times in this scene that I was able to see, and I was just very confused.
Yeah.
They escape it into the security station, and also, by this point, I completely forgot because it's completely irrelevant. I think Owen has Beta by this point, the baby Velociraptor. I don't know.
I think so. I think that's correct.
Because I remember a quippy scene where
Yeah.
Owen has Beta on his back. That might be later,
Yeah,
but Beta is completely irrelevant to this movie. So,
right. At some point.
um, yes. At this point, all of the dinosaurs have been like mind controlled. They give like a very quick reason for why like all the animals can be mind controlled, but to brought into like a safe place because the entire valley is now on fire because of the burning locusts. And you can clearly see that Dodgson, Tim Cook, is losing his mind. Um, they
Yep.
our crew has to turn back on the security system in order to escape because through all the fires and all the safety protocols, certain things got turned off, very much like the original Jurassic Park. But they must go shut down the entire system first, again, just like the original Jurassic Park. Right here is where they save Beta, where they capture Beta.
Yeah.
Tim Cook, after realizing that his life is in ruins, and that Ramsey betrayed him because like this was like his protege, he realizes that Ramsey was the one who told Ian about the locust thing, even though Ramsey could have just told the media. I don't know. That Ramsey betrayed him, and Tim Cook is distraught. He escapes also in the metro system, and is riding on it when they turn the power off to reset the system, so he gets sort of stuck. And the system reboots. Tim Cook, my next line, Tim Cook gets out of the metro like an idiot, and he gets eaten by the Dilophosaurus, which is the same dinosaur that eats Dennis Nedry in Jurassic Park, the original one. And then you
Nice.
also see that he had the Barbasol can, seemingly from the original movie, that like falls out of his backpack or something while he's getting eaten. Irony.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. So, it was apparently I had also like seen on the internet that it was earlier in the movie as well. It was somewhere in his office, and I guess he grabbed it when he went to leave. I don't know. Our team of 7 heroes finds Wu, the scientist, and he basically is like, I can fix the locusts. I just need to be able to study Maisie. Things will be fine. Trust me this time. I'm good now. And they're like, okay. And he goes with them.
Yeah.
By this point, all of the dinosaurs are inside, safe-ish. And they mentioned earlier, I think this was when we first see the Giganotosaurus with just Owen and Kayla. Kayla says something to the effect of 2 apex predators in the same environment, soon there's only going to be one, or something dramatic and dumb like that. Now we have Giganotosaurus, the T-Rex, and Therizinosaurus all together. They all fight in a big giant dinosaur fight because there needs to be a big giant dinosaur fight in these movies.
I have in my notes, cliche apex predator battle at the end, of course.
Oh, for sure. Like at first it's just the T-Rex versus the Giganotosaurus, and this isn't literally plot relevant at all. This
No.
is happening sort of in the background as our heroes are trying to run through all of these dinosaurs that have now been mind control corralled into this place. Giganotosaurus basically has the T-Rex about dead. Something happens. I don't remember because at this point I was like, I don't care.
Just get it over with.
Right. T-Rex. I think maybe the Therizinosaurus was like, hey, I see a big shape. I don't like that. And then Giganotosaurus was like, hey, I don't like you either. While it's looking at the Therizinosaurus, T-Rex comes, bites it, throws it more or less at the Therizinosaurus, and it gets impaled on its giant claws.
I laughed so hard at that. I don't know why. I just thought it was comical.
Oh, for sure.
It was just so unrealistic.
Was, but I think I was just like, okay.
Right.
And even though Therizinosaurus has been shown to attack everything else, for some reason, it and the T-Rex roar triumphantly. And yeah.
It's all good.
Yep, that is the last scene we get of the dinosaur facilities. Next scene, we basically see the doctors. So that would be, Ellie, Ellen, and Ian testifying before the Senate. We see Blue and Beta reunited. The dinosaurs are more or less free to live in the Biosyn Valley for some reason that's not
Yeah.
explained.
Yep.
And then we get various shots of dinosaurs coexisting with, other animals, as if like they weren't doing that before. And they're like,
Right.
guess we'll have to live with it now. And I'm like, those shots individually were kind of neat. Like we see some kind of ceratopsian similar to like Triceratops or something with like a herd of elephants because those animals are roughly the same size as an
Yeah.
elephant. We see the Mosasaurus somehow like cuddling with some whales.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
again, the only other time that we saw that animal in this movie, it was attacking a boat.
Mixed
Sure.
signals.
And that is how this movie ends.
Oh, you forgot one part.
Oh, hit me.
Uh, they release one genetically modified cricket
Yes. Okay.
to
You're
to
you're
go
right. Thank
into
you.
the
I
atmosphere. Oh, I'm so angry
yes.
about
I
it.
I forgot about that. Yeah. So Dr. Wu studies Maisie. He figures out some way to change the DNA of a living animal. Again, CRISPR.
Yeah.
CRISPR is more complicated than that. We can't quite do that yet, but that is basically what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And he releases that one because now he's good, and for some reason, him doing science now is good, and just trusting him now is okay.
Yeah.
But he more or less releases a locust with like the genetics to not be able to reproduce anymore or something to that effect, and it'll basically
Yeah.
act as like a virus more or less and uh, kill all the other locusts or at least prevent them from breeding or something.
Yeah. What
Which
bothers
actually there is.
me,
Go ahead.
I just won. It just, I feel like you can't bank all of your success on one single organism because what if it doesn't reproduce? What if it gets eaten? Like a little
Right.
cushion room would be nice.
I would love for just like a scene of like him because he is like out in the middle of a field with like this box with the locust in it, and he
Yeah.
like opens the
Yeah.
box and like releases it very triumphantly. And I would love a scene of just like an eagle or something as soon as it gets released, just flying in and just nailing that thing. I think that would have been so funny.
Oh, so funny.
But yeah, so that's how they fix the locust thing. Is they're like, okay, you're good now. I
Yeah.
trust you. And like there actually is a little bit of a precedent of a vaguely similar thing. So there was an experiment being considered in I think both ticks and mosquitoes
Yes.
to release some genetically modified animals
They
or
did
like
that in Florida,
individuals
didn't
to
they?
basically help control. Huh?
I'm pretty sure they did do that with mosquitoes in like Florida.
Okay. Because I know with the tick one specifically, they were doing some trials on an island to help
Okay.
control Lyme
They,
disease.
yeah, I don't think maybe the geographic location is not correct.
Right. So, but these are somewhat legitimate things that have been talked about. Um,
Yes.
but my thing is, it's like, okay, you know how to make the locusts, right?
Hmm.
Why can't you just make one that has the thing? Why do you need to take a living one and change it?
Right.
That was so dumb. You could have done that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Everything about the genetics in this movie, granted, most people don't know enough about genetics to know, but I'm like,
Yeah.
you don't even follow your own internal rules.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
was so frustrating.
Right. I agree.
So I have so many thoughts about this movie. Mostly that it was not a good movie. The biggest thing, my biggest sort of branch of thoughts were that this movie really didn't know what it wanted to be.
Yeah, it was a bit like everywhere.
So I think it was sort of caught between two very different ideas. One is that they were trying to stick to the original message of Michael Crichton stuff, which is like the unintended consequences of science,
Hmm.
while also being a big dumb movie where giant dinosaurs fight for no reason.
I see.
And those two
There are
things
both.
don't really super work together
Yeah.
because I think the first Jurassic Park movie did those things great. It was, scary enough. There was, but you treated the animals like animals, and animals being animals is scary enough.
Yeah.
um, Whereas a movie that I think they should have tried to be a little bit more like is the relatively recent Godzilla movies. Because I
I
don't know if
don't
you've
know
seen any
them.
of those.
No,
So
I
those
haven't.
movies have no illusion of what they are. They know that they are big dumb movies where you watch big dumb animals beat the crap out of each other, and that's what you're there for. You're not there
Okay.
for a complicated plot. You're not there for some kind of moral lesson about technology. You're there to watch big dumb
Right.
animals fight in a big dumb fight.
Yep.
And it doesn't take itself seriously. It just is what it is, and it rolls with it.
Yes.
Part of this movie wanted to do that
Hmm.
while also trying to be, galaxy brain and teach you a lesson when I don't think that that was necessary.
Yeah. It could have been just as cool without that.
And dear listeners, the reason why I am so harsh on this movie is because this movie is going to make a lot of money and be seen by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And as a paleontologist, this movie affects what I'm going to be talking about for the next, roughly year.
True.
And all of these animals do nothing but be monsters. All of them. And I think it is very possible to make a monster movie about animals where they still behave more or less like a regular animal would behave.
Hmm.
But these movies are like, no, we want to make big dumb animals fight while still teaching you a lesson. And I think that that was a bad decision.
Yep.
So, in conclusion, am I going to buy this movie when it comes out on DVD? Probably. Mostly because I'm curious if there are any like deleted scenes that like
Yeah.
might have any kind of redeeming quality, because everybody in this movie, like, I will say the only cool character that I liked was Kayla, the pilot. I liked her character.
Yeah.
um I also thought Ramsey was cool, the assistant person, even though I kind of forgot about him until the end of the episode. um
Yeah.
Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum was also, as always, great, but everybody else in this movie was just weird and not written all that well. They were trying to do too much, I think.
A lot of people.
Yeah. So I really hope that there's some deleted scenes that do a little bit of justice to them. Because in the original Jurassic Park movie, uh, Alan and Ellie were like good, believable scientists. They made sense.
Yeah.
Ellie in this movie, I think, still does. I think Ellie's also pretty good in this movie. But Alan is just not, and I don't think that that's Sam Neill, the actor's fault.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm really trying to find any kind of redeeming thing about this movie, and I'm not having luck. Uh,
I don't know if this happened because it's been a while since I've watched some of the movies, but
mhm.
dinos being portrayed with fur and feathers was a plus for me.
Yeah, that's fairly new. I think in, did they have any in the second one? I don't think so. Um, It originally started, I think, in Jurassic Park 3. They gave the velociraptors like sort of feather like quills on like the top of their head, but that was it. Um,
Yeah.
the Therizinosaurus in this one was also feathered a bit. Um, not feathered like you would think, more like downy sort of feathers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it is generally, you know, taken as, scientists are fairly confident in it that most, at least the theropods, the two-legged, generally meat-eating ones, were feathered at some point in their life. Whether it's just as chicks and then they lose it as they got older, or in the case of some of the smaller ones, likely feathered for their entire life. Um, that's not debated really anymore. Whether the only things that are debated is like exactly how feathered some of the adults were.
Gotcha.
So that I agree that was really good to see. At least they didn't particularly do it well.
No, but they
I
tried.
right. I think the Pyroraptor looked good,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, was probably the most anatomically correct. Like the hands are always
Mm-hmm.
something that people talk about with Jurassic Park. Dinosaurs um, couldn't like clap; their palms should not be facing each other.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I had that backwards. They're always shown with like their palms down,
Yeah.
like sort of creepy, like you're sneaking almost.
Yeah.
Their wrists didn't rotate that way, so they could clap their hands together. They couldn't like pat their knees. Um,
So they should be like sticking out,
yes,
kind of.
and so the Pyroraptor actually was really good with that. Its hands were in the right position, even like bent in a way that makes sense. Their like hands were held in a way that made sense. Were feathered in a way that made sense. Um, but yeah, just not particularly well done outside of that. So it's like, oh, the one that you get anatomically correct, you make do stupid animal behavior things.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's tough.
So yeah, that's this movie. Um, part of me hopes that I think there are two hopes that I have coming out of this. One, that they don't make another movie. As much as I love the first movie, and it's why I got into paleontology when I was younger, I don't want them to keep making these movies. I really don't. Um,
They are dragging it out a bit.
not just that, but it's like they get less and less like familiar because
Mm.
at this point there's no science in these movies at all. Whereas the first one there was decent science and also treating the animals like animals.
Yeah.
Like in the first movie, they make it a point to say these are not monsters; they are animals. Like that is an actual line from the movie. Whereas they just get more monstery every single movie.
Yeah, I definitely was scared for a lot of that movie.
Yeah, it was. Well, the first one or this one?
This one.
Yeah, it was generally kind of a spooky vibe. And like animals can
Yeah.
be scary, but you don't have to make them serial killers to make them scary.
Yeah.
Sometimes animals are just scary.
Yeah.
However, if they do have to continue with this franchise at this point, I think it would be interesting to see a TV show format, almost like how Star Wars is doing stuff right now.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't particularly like the two most recent Star Wars movies, episodes 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
But then The Mandalorian came out, and The Mandalorian is amazing. And
I
so,
cannot relate.
right, and yeah, this is just me being a nerd about a lot of things right now. But that gave me hope that like, okay, with the right people involved, Star Wars things can be good still. And so we just need to get Jon Favreau involved in the Jurassic Park franchise, and maybe things will be okay. Not necessarily good. I've
We
given
can
up
hope.
on hoping for a good thing from the Jurassic Park franchise. But be okay.
We'll shoot for okay.
Exactly. So Do you have any closing thoughts on this big dumb movie?
I was wondering if I could do a shout out.
Absolutely.
I would like to shout out my friends that came to watch the movie with me, Skylar, Ben, Jill, and Matt. Thank you for coming to watch this, even though you had no reason to come. Appreciate you and hope you listen. That's it.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Shout out to all of you. Yeah, this has been episode 79 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin. That is Fia. Mike will be back with us next week, and until then, we'll see you later. This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Gavin Davidson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Fenella Campanino. It was sound edited by Mike Bryson and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.